It has been good to me this time around. Things were bound to change when it was found. Sugar never tasted sweeter on my lips. My heart is now intact, and I can find no rest. This is love, yeah, love. Never known true love before. Seen so many counterfeits that left me on the floor. This is love, yeah, love. All will come to go two ways. Time it cannot know the bounds, and eras don't dictate.
Well, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Xandermonium. I'm Xander Gibb.
And I'm Tyhe. Egar, welcome.
And on today's show, we'll be breaking down some of this week's hotter topics. And in part two, Wendy Gritter from New Direction CA will be dropping by. More to come in a mere moment. You can interact with us during the show in the chat room at the bottom of the page. Keep scrolling down. If it doesn't let you in, you can sign in with Facebook or Twitter, so you can join in the conversation. You can also call us on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. Or on Twitter, you can tweet us. My Twitter handle is @XanderGibb, XanderGibb, capital X, capital G. And Tyhe's Twitter handle is @TyhePaulEgar, TYHEPAULEGAR, capital T, capital P, capital E. And you can also tweet Wendy. Wendy's Twitter handle is @WGritter. That's W, the letter GRITTER. Tweet me or Tyhe if you're too shy, and we will make your point for you. Oh, yes, we will. So this week's show is sponsored by Pride Voyager, the home of everything for the LGBT community. www.pridevoyager.com. We'll be telling you a bit more about that website a little later on in the show, but feel free to go along and take a look. How has your week been, Tyhe? Anything interesting to share with us?
It's been good. It's been quite calm for a change. I'm usually manic when you ask me this, aren't I? I usually bombard you with information, but no, not this week, for it has been calm. I've just been getting ready to start writing again, and just been going to the gym and just being calm. And, well, we're going to talk about Pride Voyager in a minute, but just preparing for things like that. But it's been quite a nice, chilled week. Yes, I'm going to regret saying that now because it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket now. But it's been great.
Isn't it always the way? I've had a few people asking this week, when is my second book coming out? And my answer simply is when I finish writing it. I've got so many projects going on right now. The book is kind of on the back burner, and I really want to do an album before I do the next book. And although I want to do all of these things, there are only so many hours in the day. And so how do you work and do your job to bring your money in, as well as all of these other projects? Because obviously one can't pay for these things without the benefit of being able to work and earn money. So I just, I hope it's going to be this year, but I can't promise anything.
Well, I can promise people that my second book is not going to be out this year. There is no way on planet Earth. So I'm really sorry, because I know I promised I would do my best. Well, actually, I promised I would do my best to get it out this year. But it's not going to happen because, as you just mentioned, actually, and the book. Thank you. But because now I also, I'm writing with Mr. J.B. McKellar from the Media Whores, who we promised will be coming on the show. But I'm writing a solo album, and I'm going to start with him. But now, of course, Pride Voyager and Pride Couples have taken over my life a bit. And I haven't been writing for a little while because I simply haven't had the time. That has started to invade my head again, so I am going to be sitting down and writing. Actually, I'll start writing again tomorrow for real. But I've just looked at the size of the story and looked at everything else I've got to do. And as you're saying, we have to pay our bills like everybody else. And I've realised the size of the book, and it's just not going to be this year. So I'm really, really sorry. By some miracle it may be kind of Christmas, but we would be looking at December at the earliest. So I'm really sorry, but that's how it is.
And I guess that's the price you pay for being an independent artist as well. I mean, I know we've both been managed in the past on various fronts, but I do think that it certainly is the way to go. And I think it opens the doors for more people to be able to manage their careers more efficiently. Because I don't know about you, but I was always finding, I was paying 15 to 20% when I could get just as much work on my own. So, being an independent artist is the way to go as far as I'm concerned.
I think apart from, I absolutely agree, but I think apart from that as well, it's just, I think your work's more honest because you end up working for your manager rather than the other way around. I found I always felt like I was doing what they wanted me to do as opposed to what I wanted them to do. In fact, I remember the last manager I had to sit down with him and have the conversation. Can we just make something clear? You work for me. Why am I having this conversation? I was having a specific conversation with him and just said, no, hang on a minute. Why? Because I was finding that I wasn't getting a chance. I was walking on stage, performing and walking back off, and I wasn't even getting a chance to talk to fans and supporters because I was just being whipped off somewhere else to do something else, and it was all about money. So I find it work. Yes, it's harder work, and we both say, please, I want an assistant, but it's much more honest doing it this way, and I get time to spend. When somebody wants to talk to me about my work, who supports me or is a fan, whatever you want to call them, I can actually sit with them or talk to them, whatever, and spend time doing that as opposed to having somebody tapping me on the shoulder saying, come on, we've got to go, clicking the calculator as they do it. So
absolutely.
I'm happy doing it this way.
I always thought you liked being whipped, and I thought getting paid for it would be a bit of a bonus, but clearly not.
No,
so
that
let's
would
have
be
a
the
look
other way
at
around.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that part.
Anyway, moving on.
There.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly on. Let's break into our first news story today. It's a girl, they were shouting this morning at Prince William, not because he looks like one, but because Kate Middleton and Prince William welcomed their second child, Her Royal Highness Princess of Cambridge, no name as yet, born today at 8:34 a.m. UK time in St Mary's Hospital in London after less than 3 hours of labor. She weighs 8 pounds 3 ounces, and the announcement came from Kensington Palace and also on Twitter. I thought that was kind of funny that they made the announcement on Twitter too. Now, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, Prince Harry and all members of both families have been informed and are delighted with the news. It read today in the news. Hopefully the birth went as smoothly as it did with Prince George. According to a story published by Vanity Fair, Milton told friends that the labor and delivery with her firstborn was natural and straightforward, which I think means lots of pills, lots of gas and air, and lots of swearing at Prince William. So I can't... Absolutely. Give me more drugs and get away from me, Wills. I don't ever want you to touch me again. But I can't help but think of Princess Diana and how she would have reacted to having a granddaughter, and it kind of made me miss her a little bit more with her being absent, obviously because she's not alive anymore at this time. So congratulations to the royal couple. Sleepless nights and diaper duties await. So what's your first response to this? Are you pro-royal? Are you not pro-royal? What does all this signify for you? Is it more tourism? What is it?
Honestly, I'm sorry, folks. I couldn't care less. I've said this about the first one. Honestly, I mean, we've had all sorts of different tweets and whatever over here today. There are UK is full of royalists. Royalists, is that the royal supporters? I should say royalists. So, the country, we're thrilled. But women have babies every moment of every day. It's not clever.
Right.
I'm very, very pleased for them that she's healthy, or that both mother and baby are healthy, obviously. But she's done it once before. There's no surprise she managed to do it a second time. As far as, you know, a healthy natural birth, I mean, what were people expecting her to do it on a pogo stick, for Christ's sake? I'm not remotely interested. Good for her. Whether they call it Diana or not, I don't know. It would be nice, but on the other hand, it would be a constant reminder to William, I suppose, about his mum. But then I don't know. But right, they've done it. Get on with it. I don't care. You know,
I'm sure.
It's nothing special.
Sorry. I'm absolutely sure the Queen would put her foot down and say that is not going to happen, because this kid is in line to the throne. I'm not sure where, but can you imagine the Queen would kind of like turn in her grave if there was a Queen Diana on the throne. I mean, that's exactly what started the trouble all in the first place. I think she didn't like
I know
Diana.
But I can't imagine William giving a toss really what the Queen thinks, to be honest.
Right.
I certainly wouldn't. I'd be like, do you know what? You've been on the throne. Just shut it. Really, you've been on there longer than God.
Yeah.
You've had your run. You know, you're one of the richest women on the planet. I'm not really interested in what you thought of my mother. Can you imagine the Queen? You know, your grandmother saying, "Listen, I really couldn't stand your mother, so you're not calling your daughter Diana." I'd be kind of like, swivel on this bitch. You know, frankly. So I really don't see them bowing to that kind of pressure. But on the other hand, it might be too much for him. He might not want that. You know, I mean, they might have already chosen. And also, they've got the mother to think of. Obviously, Kate might not be interested in that either. It's just, you know, it was just something that was put out there today by fans of the family, actually. Because needless to say, the press have been wandering up and down the streets outside this hospital like they've found alien life. And asking all the fans, you know, who have got the hats on, waving the flags like, you know, nobody's ever given birth before. Asking them, and they're all saying, "Oh well, all girls love princesses." And I thought, well, that's not necessarily true. You know, I can think of a few lesbians that couldn't care less about. Well, exactly.
I definitely love princesses. You know.
Yeah, and I can think of quite a lot of lesbians that couldn't care less. But anyway, so they're all going on about, and a few did mention, "Oh well, wouldn't it be nice? You know, maybe they call it keep saying it her Diana." You can see where I'm going. As far as I care about children, I have no paternal instincts at all. So you know, so there's that possibility. But they maybe have already chosen a name. I would imagine they would want to know beforehand what you know, what's it going to be, so we can paint the castle whatever appropriate colour. You know,
absolutely.
The castle that we're all paying for.
They should have just gone for pink and be done with it. You know, everybody would have been happy then, especially the gays. But I want to talk for a minute about Princess Diana, because although I've never been really pro-royal, you know, I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to them, but I actually really loved and respected Princess Diana, and I kind of felt that she tried to make a difference. And I was really touched by the fact that there was all this in the late 80s, early 90s, when she was going to this AIDS hospice in London, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they were all speculating whether or not she would wear gloves. I mean, I'm astounded that they would even discuss such ridiculous things, but she didn't. And I know for a fact that she was always very pro-gay. You know, we know people that worked at the palace that worked for Charles and stuff, who were gay, and, you know, go on.
The controversy, though, the big deal that she did, the real breaker for us, the real wonderful thing that she did, it wasn't that she didn't wear gloves. She kissed the guy. She kissed an AIDS victim in bed. She kissed him on the cheek, and that was the thing that the press and the photograph actually allowed that to be photographed, and that was the thing that blew everything out of the water. She stood by us for that. She made a real impression on the world with that, because, you know, the world loved her, and she made it very clear that what she thought of people's opinion of the way they were treating the gay community, and she turned that around, and she was that was a huge thing that she did, and I think for that she will be loved, you know, the world over, certainly by the gay community. Would never ever forget that, and should never ever forget that. And if it ever is forgotten, then we certainly should raise it again. You know, for that she should always be beloved by the gay community, because it was an incredible thing that she did. Among other things, not just for our community. I mean, you're right. She changed a lot of things, a lot of opinions about a lot of things in the world. She was, for the armed forces, for disabilities, for disadvantaged kids. I mean, she was an amazing woman, no question. But I think Kate's going in that direction. Having said that, I mean, I think she's going to be another. But Harry and William, I mean, they're certainly their mother's children. I mean, she'd be very, very proud of what her sons are doing and have done. So she's certainly left a legacy, no question.
I mean, the difference for me with Diana was that she didn't do it so everybody said, "Oh, what a wonderful Princess Diana is." She actually did it because she seemed to genuinely care, and I think the kids would have developed that too. I remember reading a story in the 90s where she took the kids to meet someone who was dying. I think it was cancer they were dying of, but one of the last wishes was to meet Princess Diana, and she, without the press or anybody else, she took the kids and went to meet this person.
Yeah.
But I definitely think she did a lot to, with regards to HIV and AIDS. I mean, I don't know if she actually said it directly, but there, there was a statement at the time that how ridiculous. Why would I think that you could get AIDS from kissing someone? Because, AIDS, you can't catch AIDS. You can only catch HIV. And I remember at the time that I just thought that was amazing that either her or her pupil would go into great depth about that to be able to educate people as a byproduct of what she was trying to do.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. She did a lot. I think the sad thing, towards the end of, I think what actually became her undoing was the fact that she courted the press too much, and it became the end of her, basically.
Well, they did kill her, didn't they? Let's face it. It was the paparazzi
running
that
away
forced
from
the car off the road.
But she courted them as well, and I think she courted them too much, and it kind of backfired in the end. But then, something should have been done about that, and I think the royals turned their back on her. I think she was left out on her own, and it all got very dodgy, and they have a lot to be embarrassed about. But I think that's one of the reasons as well. They didn't do them. She didn't do them any favors. She didn't give them any quarter.
No, absolutely, and I think her legacy really does live on through those boys, and it's kind of weird. I remember when they were both born, and here they are now having kids. So it kind of everything seems to go full circle.
Well, absolutely, and they're both. Harry's no stranger to controversy, is he? Either he's not scared of dipping his toe into the water. But it's good. I think it's good because the royal family is defunct. It's had its day. It's done. But it doesn't mean that they can't be proactive in the world and be good for the for the UK or do things positively and keep the world's eyes open, and I think that's what they are doing. I don't think they take the royal thing too seriously personally, although they're stuck in that family. But I suppose while they're here, they might as well be useful, and I think that's what they are doing. That they are making themselves a positive force around, and that's good. So they have my respect for that. Do you know what I mean? I don't wish them ill, but I'm not, as far as them being superior beings to me, no. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's not, there'll be no bowing or curtsying. Thank you very much.
No, they can bow to me. I'm a queen. They can certainly bow to me. But yeah, on behalf of everybody here at Xandermonium, congratulations to William and Kate, and we look forward to finding out what you call your child.
So from one, and let us know.
Yeah, so from one future queen to lots of queens, tell us about our sponsors today. That was a great segue, wasn't it?
Fantastic.
Tell us about our sponsors today, PrideVoyager.com, as you're actually a part of this organization. Tell us what they do. Tell us what their aims and objectives are, and tell us about who it's for.
Okay, I feel like some kind of CIA spy now. Pride Voyager is basically...
Wait. You have to say, listen carefully. Okay. I shall say this only once.
Listen carefully, I shall say this only once. I'm going to repeat myself constantly now. It's a social media platform, and it's a community for the LGBT or whatever community out there in the world. At the moment, it's slowly growing. We want to take it viral, obviously, gradually, and that's what we are doing gradually. But it's a space that that I was given the opportunity to take control over. That sounds really ominous, doesn't it? So I've now become the group CEO, and I'm working along with.
So you're
people.
the dom of the group, basically.
I'm the domino, of the group. And what it was an amazing opportunity I was offered, and I was not going to say no when I saw what the opportunities and the are for it. So what it is it's a firewall protected community. I want to start by saying that. So unlike other sources, we don't collect information about people. We don't gather information. We don't sell it on. We don't ask you if we can sell it on. There's not even the option there. But it's an LGBT exclusive community, but also for their families. We're not saying if you can't be on there unless you're LGBT, but it is exclusively for us. But what it is a community set up for LGBT and their family to do anything really that they'd like to do. We have forums on there. We have set up a list of forums from anything from health to politics. Religion is up there if you really must have it up there. I don't intervene. It's a free thinking community. Anybody can, there's free speech there. We do not censor people. Obviously, legally, we don't. If somebody breaks the law, then we would react the way anybody would react. We have an ethical policy, of course we do, but we don't censor people. In that sense, you have a right to your opinion, and you have the right to interact with each other, and we actively encourage you to do that. Also, there is Gibb on there, which made me smile when I first saw it, which is the equivalent, obviously, to a certain market out there. So people can come on.
We shall not name because we don't give free advertising.
Absolutely not. But you can work it out, really.
Yeah.
So you can set up your own markets on there. You can set up your own shops on there. We're setting up e-commerce on there as well at the moment, which was there before. It's a long story. It was lost as I took over from somebody else. So if there are people out there listening now who wish to contact me, who want to set up e-commerce up there, please contact me. And you can do that through the site. But at the moment, so that's all building at the moment. You can set up your own shops up there. You can do that for free, or you can pay for things. At the moment, it's all free membership. And if you're listening, I would take advantage of this at the moment because I haven't got around to changing it. At the moment, you have free access to competition, and they're serious competitions. And if you live in the UK, unfortunately, it's only the UK at the moment, you get some major discounts to theatre tickets in the West End of London. And they're not crap. Can I say it? These are really seriously good theatre
now, is it only
tickets.
for musicals or shows that contain show tunes, or is it,
No, it's the whole of the West End. Thank you for that, Xander. But yes, although Wicked and Phantom of the Opera are in there, because Wicked is my favourite of all time. Theatre.
Now, one thing that really speaks to me about this website, Tyhe, is that it's a safe space. And as far as I'm concerned, there are not enough safe spaces out there for the LGBTQABCDFG community. And you actually, if someone was harassed on there, you would deal with it. Unlike
Absolutely.
Facebook, who would just say, "Oh, well, it's freedom of speech." You would actually do something about it.
Totally, absolutely. All the members, I'm there myself as a mediator, but we have mediators there. If somebody reports being bullied or anything like that is going on, it'll be investigated straight away. And if it's proven, that member will be removed permanently. And also, if it was illegal, if it was harassment or it was homophobia or anything like that, there'd be that information then would be shared. We'd
have to send the girls round, wouldn't we, with their pocketbooks, basically.
Without hesitation.
Yep.
That's why it's firewall protected. But that's why we don't collect people's information. So it would have to be reported to us by other members or another member. That's the whole point of it being protected. Because the other thing I'm doing as well is I'm writing out and constantly writing out to charities and support agencies asking them to send me their JPEGs or their GIFs and their artwork and their information, and I'm adding them onto the site so that young people, well, not necessarily young people, people who are struggling or feeling alone in the LGBT community can go onto the site and immediately find support systems or charities or helplines that they can get in touch with people straight away. And when we have managed to get this enough membership up and it is viral, you know, people will be constantly on there. And the point there is there'll be forums as well for people to just instantly start talking to each other and supporting each other. Again, it will always be monitored. My idea, there are lots of things going into this. There are lots of things I want to start with as well, and I've already thought about other areas as well. Particularly, I was thinking the other day as well about supports in cities as well. Actually, physically, not just in the forums, but for former soldiers as well, LGBT. Well, it would be gay and lesbian, I suppose, at the moment, wouldn't it? Soldiers, former serving soldiers, who like
good
straight,
point.
You know, who are left out there high and dry when they've served, you know,
Absolutely.
forgotten about. So there's a lot of things I want to bring out of Pride Voyager. It's an amazing space, and I want it to just grow and grow. But there are parts of it that will eventually become premium parts of it, which people can dip in and out of, though. There will be paid parts of it. You don't have to do that. Everything I've just spoken about is absolutely free and will remain absolutely free forever and ever. But there will be premium parts of it, which will be the kind of competition sides of it, but which are serious sides of it. I mean, you know, they're not like here you can win a £5, and there are other. Because one thing we are going to set up with it as well are exclusive.
Know what a $5 is, Tyhe?
Sorry, $5 or £5 or whatever. The major competition. I've been talking to people, and also what we're doing is what we want to set up as well. But that would be for they would be the premium accounts would be. We're going to set up parties around the world for exclusive member parties, but again, that would be paid membership. But we were talking about that as well. We're discussing that, and we're going to literally hire a kind of serious party organisers to do that.
I just want to know, can you get me a brown baby? That's all I want to know.
Well, actually, that would be Pride Couples. We'll discuss that when Pride Couples is up and running, because that's a whole different trip.
So make sure you... Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, so that's Pride Voyager in a nutshell. And also, any suggestions, this is the thing about Pride Voyager as well, it's organic. I've been given this role because, obviously, the investors trust that I can do this. And I'm also constantly in touch with investors. You know, this is not some kind of cold-hearted people, you know, in the distance somewhere at all. And it's organic, and I want to keep it that way. So when members have any suggestions, if they're sensible and they are doable, they'll happen. You know, we will constantly keep Voyager organic, and it will grow and grow. And you know, there are lots of ideas I have at the minute. And as tragic as this sounds, I'm not putting them out there right now because you know I'm not having people nick them, frankly.
Absolutely.
But it's all about supporting
the LGBT. Absolutely. So do make sure to go and check out www.pridevoyager.com, and it's really becoming a true community resource. Would you agree with that? Rather than just to make money from you, like Facebook and Twitter and other sites that are out there.
No, absolutely. It's free. As I mentioned, and you know, I've just mentioned the things that you can pay for, but everything I've just mentioned as far as the forums, the chat, you know, the support side of it, everything that's about the community is free and will always be free. That will never ever change. And membership is free. You just have to join. You know, you can't just dip in and out. Your membership's important because it's firewall protected. But everything I've just mentioned, apart from the party, the competition, etc., everything I've just mentioned is free and will always be free to you. So that won't
Absolutely.
change.
So be sure to go check out www.pridevoyager.com, the sponsors of this week's episode of Xandermonium. If you just joined us, you're listening to me, Xander Gibb.
And me, Tyhe Egar.
Absolutely. So our next story is something that's been floating around the social media and has been kind of on the minds of most Americans this week. Now, the top prosecutor in Baltimore, Maryland, said on Friday that Freddie Gray's death in police custody was ruled as a homicide, and that the 6 police officers involved in his arrest would be indicted. State's Attorney Marilyn J. Mosby, 35, in the job for only 4 months, made the announcement publicly across from Baltimore's City Hall. Cheers broke out when she announced that criminal charges would be filed, including a murder charge against the driver of the police van in which Gray was injured. She said officers seemed to have ignored Freddie Gray's medical condition over and over and over. Now, the announcement was a stunning, swift turn in the Gray case, which has riveted Baltimore and fueled protesters and riots over the past 2 weeks. She said, I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. However, your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of Freddie Gray, which drew cheers from the small crowd of demonstrators standing behind reporters. As young people, our time is now. And the police union said none of the officers were responsible for Gray's tragic death. At a press conference on Friday afternoon, a lawyer for one of the officers blamed an egregious rush to judgment. Gray, a 25-year-old black Baltimore resident, died in police custody on April 19th after being arrested a week earlier. He sustained injuries, including a smashed voice box and a severed spine, though police initially claimed they had arrested him without force. And all of this had apparently taken effect over a 45-minute journey to the police station. Now, is this being talked about in the UK, Tyhe? Are people aware of it?
Oh, yeah.
What's your reaction to this?
I think people, I don't think, there can't possibly be a country this is not being talked about in. I mean, the riots have certainly been headline news here. Although, surprisingly, what actually made me feel a little bit sick was that the news headlines were focusing on the riots, not actually what the riots were about a lot, or they would just mention Freddie's name, and that was it. Do you know what I mean? Or they just say, oh, these 6 police officers, and I thought, not a lot of detail there, really, is there, folks, you know? But then on the other hand, I thought, you know, actually, though, people are going to want to know what this is about. So hopefully that would at least encourage people to find out what it was about. But yeah, it's certainly been in the headlines, and quite rightly, because, I mean, well, it's just a disgrace, isn't it? I mean, tragedy doesn't even begin to describe it. I mean, what a horrific, terrifying, monstrous thing to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's, you know, how they could possibly think they would get away with this. Words fail me. Well, you can hear, you know. I mean, really, how did they possibly think they would get away with this? And the cruelty of it, really, is mind-numbing.
I mean, there are several aspects to this for me. And the first being that there needs to be an investigation to know exactly what's happened, because we've seen lots of information out there. You know, he'd had spinal surgery a few weeks before, and it's alleged by the police that he didn't tell them that. It's alleged by other people that were around that he did. There also, now I know there's racism out there. I'll be the first one to admit that, yeah, it's still, you know, there is still racism in America on a grand scale. But to say that this is a racially motivated incident is kind of, it's a bit dubious to me, because 3 of the officers involved were black, were African Americans. They're even charging the driver of the van with culpability. Now, how can they charge someone and say they're culpable if they actually drove the van and were transporting them to the police station? I mean, there are lots of things that are outstanding for me.
Well, my argument would be, if he was driving in the van, surely you could hear them. If we are saying that they were beating this guy up in the back of the van, then surely the driver could hear it and he should have intervened. So you're guilty by do you know what I mean? Just because you didn't do anything doesn't mean you're not guilty. Again, I'm just going off the headline, same as you. Okay, so this is all speculation on our part, listeners. But this is my take on it. Okay, so the charges. All right. Now, and I think this thing about racism, it's easy to throw that out. Everybody just wants it to be about racism, and you're quite right. If 3 of the officers are black, what does that say about their self-esteem? If it was racist, that's just bizarre. It can't be. But it can certainly be. It doesn't mean it can't be a hate crime. Maybe they think they're better than their fellow man, and they just think, they have a right to behave this way. Certainly there are anger. I mean, what the hell is that about? There are certainly anger issues there. Why do 6 cops think it's okay to beat down on one guy? I mean, was this guy on PCP? What is their excuse for this? What is their reasoning for it? So,
I don't think it's even been put out there why he was arrested. We don't even know why he was arrested.
Okay.
But
clearly this
sticks out for me.
Is totally out of control, isn't it, basically?
Of course. And this kind of brings up again the need for all officers to have cameras,
I think that's time.
The uniform.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to have to happen now. But I want to move. I don't want to skate over this young man's death because it's absolutely terrible. Whether he's black, white, pink, or blue, nobody should end up dead in police custody because you're their responsibility. The reaction to this has been most concerning for me. Now, the first thing I want to say is that I'm totally disgusted with the mayor of Baltimore. She's this young black woman. She's also got some high-ranking position in the Democratic Party. But she admonished the rioting. They said I'm paraphrasing now, but basically she was saying they needed an outlet. So she was saying that was okay for them to riot, which to me is so ridiculous. She should pay for. Yes, it is, and she should pay for those businesses. Personally, she should be responsible for those businesses that have been destroyed and all the looting that took place. Now, I'm all for any kind of peaceful protest, but when it comes to permissive rioting, because that's what that was on the first day. They didn't call the National Guard until the second day. She'd said it was all right. She'd said it was okay, and that is a concern for me. It's disgusting
of course,
what
other
happened.
People could have died.
But let's deal with this civilly. Let's investigate what's happened and then object. If we're not happy with the outcome. But rioting, in my book, is just not acceptable.
I think
it really isn't.
No, and I think the sad thing about that isn't it, is that a lot of those people weren't rioting in favour of Freddie, were they? It was just an excuse for them to get violent and to cause some destruction, and they know that. And for her to say that was just stupid, irresponsible. And it's also a woman in power, in some kind of power, to say, oh well, you can't blame them. Well, yeah, we can.
Yes, we can. We definitely can. And what about, that one thing that I thought was amazing was the woman who saw her son was rioting, and she went and got him and kicked his ass in the street. He's 17, 18 years old. She said, I don't want this for your life. She dragged him away from the from the affray, from what was going on. She was an African. She was a black person too. Obviously, her son was. She's been criticized basically for saying that for what she did. So what was she supposed to do? Leave him there and let him get arrested, or potentially killed?
So that just goes to show the hypocrisy of society and the press, doesn't it? So if she'd left him there, so if the press had found out that she'd seen him on camera and done nothing, what a terrible mother she is. She just did nothing. She stood there and saw her son. Oh, her son's out of control. She can't control him. But because she went out and did something, well, what a terrible thing to do. She stopped her son from life. That's just the hypocrisy and nonsense that goes on in the world. Good for her. She did exactly what she should have done. She went out and she stopped her child getting himself potentially killed. She stopped him getting arrested. She stopped him and she made a stand and said, what you're doing is wrong. Even though what happened to this guy is wrong, you're not, two wrongs do not make a right. So good for her. She did exactly the right thing. So
we want to ask you out there what you think. get onto social media. Make your voice heard. Tell people what you think. It's imperative that we look at this from a different perspective. I don't like the fact that people are saying that all police officers are bad, all police officers are racist, because that's not true. If an Irishman punches you in the face, does that mean all Irishmen will punch you in the face? No. We've got to stop generalizing. We've got to stop with all of this negativity and really kind of come together as a community, because until that happens, things are not going to change. There's no us and them. There's just us. You know, I was reminded of this week by our next guest, who really kind of brought it home when she said, "There is no us and them. There is just us," and that's, you know, that's the way we have to start to look at it, because our differences are not what's going to bring us together. It's the things that we have in common that will. So without further ado, I am going to bring on our next guest, who is Wendy Gritter, and she's the Executive Director of New Direction in Canada. I had so many people this week saying, "Is it true you have someone from One Direction on your show this week?" No, that's not the case. She's far more fabulous. She's a passionate advocate for those who've been hurt or marginalized by the church. She believes that the church is impoverished if any voices are missing from the conversation. She says she's learned a lot from the many great gay Christians she has come to know. And I first became aware of Wendy from a poignant article she wrote last year, and with this being an issue high on my agenda as someone who struggled with the response of some Christians, notice I'm not generalizing, regarding my sexuality. So let's welcome back to the show Wendy Gritter. Welcome back to the show, Wendy. I hope you're feeling better, because I know you've not been well this week. How's it going?
I'm doing well today. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, Wendy.
It's a pleasure to have
Hello.
you back. You're live with myself and Tyhe, who wasn't here last time you came on the show. So for anybody who's never heard of New Direction Canada, not One Direction as some people are asking, which I'm sure you get a lot of, tell us in a nutshell what New Direction Canada is about.
Yeah, the nutshell is always a bit of a challenge, because the organization has a notorious history. Back in 1985, it was an ex-gay ministry, a pray away the gay kind of Christian organization. I came in 2002 and have charted a very drastic change in course and direction. And today we cultivate communities for LGBTQ people and allies to share their faith, to heal up from toxic religious environments, as well as offering consultative services and training for Christian communities that want to do a better job of being hospitable and just for our queer siblings in the faith.
Brilliant. That's actually a great
That
nutshell.
was a nutshell. That was a great nutshell.
It was indeed. Now, one of the things that I really want to talk to you about is, now, people like Tyhe and myself have been dealing with this kind of thing from some Christians for a long time. I identify as a Christian. Tyhe doesn't, but we'll find out a little bit more about what he does identify with in a little minute. But this week, for a long time, I've been trying to not react so much to some Christians who put it out there that homosexuality is the biggest sin that there ever was. It's Christians' jobs to rebuke the gay community, even so much that somebody put a meme out there this week that said, "Christians rebuke the gay community. Homosexuality is an abomination." Leviticus 18, verse 22. I have a problem with this sign, go complain to Yahweh? Well, we obviously know the word homosexual or homosexuality isn't mentioned once in the Bible. And where do Christians get off with this analysis that homosexuality is worse than any other sin? And how do we combat that without dropping to that level of response?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question. Certainly sexuality for religious people is an anxiety-producing topic, whether it's gay, straight, or purple. And we can give a lot of attribution to St. Augustine for that nice little deposit in the collaborative psyche of religious people, that sexuality is shameful, that sexuality should be avoided, that sexuality is perhaps a necessary evil to bring forth children, but certainly not a gift from God or not something to be enjoyed or experience pleasure through, which is completely unbiblical. Sexuality is part of our personhood. We have been created in the good image of God, and so that part of our sexuality is also a gift and a beautiful way to express intimacy and our humanity. So most religious people feel a pretty significant deposit of shame. They've been socialized through their religious systems to be suspicious of or flat out afraid of that which is other. So those who think differently, who look differently, who behave differently, who live within a different sort of construct, they are to be suspect. In particular, then, in the realm of sexuality, they've been socialized to experience disgust at anything that is other, that is different. Now, none of this is biblical. This has all been an enculturated response to a religious system that claims to use the Bible as a sacred text. And so because it happens at such a unconscious, sometimes, and deep emotional level, I think it's critical to begin to try to find some common ground where there can be agreement. Because if you just confront these deeply held emotional constructs that people aren't even aware of, you're just guaranteed to arouse defensiveness. And so most Christians will be able to grudgingly admit that all human beings are created in God's image and that there's something profoundly good and beautiful about that. And so that's often the place that I would begin in trying to open the conversation. And then for those who claim Christ as their Savior, as their teacher, as their model, what's so intriguing and quite subversive about the ministry of Jesus is that he constantly went and hung out with all the wrong people according to the religious leaders of his day.
Right.
He went to the margins. He embraced those who had been ostracized and alienated. And so I think there are some ways to open the conversation without right away triggering some of those deep-seated, anxious and inappropriate responses, and actually try to connect with someone's heart, that the heart of Jesus, if he was walking the earth today, would be for the LGBTQ community. I have absolutely no doubt of that, because they have been marginalized by those in religious power. And Jesus wasn't about trying to gain power. He modeled this incredible power of powerlessness. And so, unfortunately, especially in this particular matter, Christians have been trying to grasp and grab and hold on to power, and it's quite antithetical to the message of Jesus.
Absolutely. Now, there seems to have been an upsurge recently in Christians. I want to choose my words wisely, but I want to say attacking gay people, whether it be on social media or in person or verbally or whatever. Now, do you think that it's no coincidence that this comes at a time where gay marriage is being assessed by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, I think this is a catalyst, the SCOTUS deliberations, but I think for some time, I'm Canadian, and so we could be easily described as a post-Christendom culture, in that earlier in the history of our nation, the church held a much more central and influential and powerful role in society. The church has increasingly become marginalized in Canadian society, and that means a massive adjustment for baby boomer and older generations who were used to kind of being at the center of power. Now, I think it's incredibly healthy for the church to not be in the center of power. The earliest beginnings of a faith that might have been called Christian was very much on the margins. And I think where the faith lost its subversiveness and its power in humility is when Constantine made it the religion of the empire, of the Roman Empire. What I see in America is that the shaking and crumbling of Christendom has been going on for a while, and yet American culture still has this odd, sort of evangelicalized, politicized kind of religious base. And the SCOTUS deliberations about marriage equality, I think, are the biggest tremors, so to speak, signaling the end of Christendom in America. And of course, that means people are threatened. They're going to be very defensive. They're going to kind of pull out all the stops to try to hold on to those places of power and influence. Now, again, I would reiterate, I don't think that's the heart of the gospel or was ever Jesus' intention that the church would be sort of this place of influence and power, because, frankly, that's an open invitation for corruption. I think it's when you're marginalized and when you're needing to serve just for the sake of serving, not because, you're central, that we really begin to live out the true values of the gospel, which is, wading into the middle of the bubonic plague and caring for the dying when no one else would. And, of course, we know that in the 80s, Christians in North America had the prime opportunity to live out the faith in the AIDS crisis and refused to do so. And not only didn't serve, but actually so erroneously called out this reality as something to do with God's judgment, which, if God was going to inflict us with disease because of our sin, all of North America would be doomed, because we hold 80% of the world's wealth while children are dying every single minute from hunger and preventable diseases.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, see, so that's what for me, what's happening. Hi, Wendy. Sorry, it's my voice. I haven't spoken yet. For me, I think because Xander was asking what I believe and but Xander and I have spoken before. I've said you call it God, I call it source energy. Okay, just to that clear. But I think that for me, I was having this conversation with somebody this week as well. For me, there's a difference between religion and faith. And I'm really interested in what you're saying, and I haven't found anything to disagree with from your viewpoint at the moment. But I think what scares religion, what these so-called religious leaders are terrified of, and have been for the past few years, is that people like yourself and people of faith have realized that they are exactly what you're saying they are. They're corrupt, and also, I would get one further, they are pointless. And they have no foundation of realistic usefulness anymore. And people don't need them, and they're moving away from that. And you're quite right; they are far from having faith. They are the people, they're pointing the finger at us. And I don't just mean gay people; I mean anybody. They're pointing the finger at us, and actually, they're the ones that should be being judged by their own standards. And as far as the LGBT community, I think from a psychology point of view, the Bible, things written in the Bible. I mean, I have my own issues with the Bible, I have to be honest. But I think
sure.
that the men that wrote about the homosexual, I mean, obviously the word didn't exist then, but that wrote about homosexuals in the Bible, and sex for that matter, as you were saying earlier, clearly were really bad in bed and were gay. They were just afraid to come out. They had issues. They had made, and because you read about the way things were written, and not just in the Bible, just historically, the way these men write about sex, they had major issues about their sexuality, their own sexuality, and they had major issues. They were certainly misogynist about the way they speak about women. Their whole attitude, full stop, was just appalling, and they managed to turn that somehow into, well, I spoke to Jesus. I have no problem, by the way, with it, that I certainly believe that Jesus Christ walked this planet, was a very spiritual man. We know that he disappeared for 10 years. I mean, he's mentioned in the Quran more than Muhammad. Buddha mentions him. He disappeared for 10 years. He went on a very spiritual journey, came back home, tried to stop people treating each other like crap, and was killed for it. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that. I believe that 100%. So from that point of view, I have faith in him from that, from that perspective. And people didn't like that, and I think that will always be the argument. But a lot of things as well, a lot of I take issue with from that perspective as well, is a lot of these rituals that they now throw at us and say that we're destroying, were actually stolen from pagan rites as well. Marriage is a Roman ritual. And yet, apparently, as the gay community now can get married, we're going to destroy the foundation of the holy ceremony of marriage. Well, it wasn't a holy ceremony to start with. It was a Roman pagan ceremony. So these are the things I take issue with. But understand why these people are scared, because people like yourself are offering true options of faith for young people, and for anybody really who is now disenfranchised from those people who had control, because I don't think it was about offering them somewhere to worship, it was about controlling them. And they don't have that power anymore, and I think that's what it's all about. I think it's absolute terror. It's flooding. It's particularly the Vatican. I think if you look at the Vatican now, it's trembling in its boots, literally, because it's losing control over millions of people.
Yeah, I think, the essential picture of Jesus as part of the faith is that Jesus is the Son of God. Well, how does that work? Well, God became human. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means astounding humility. Whether you believe it literally or whether you believe it as a story to frame an understanding of God, or whether you think it's entirely bunk, but the incarnation is the big Christian word we use, and it essentially says that God chose to strip himself or herself of privilege, of the power of divinity, to identify with humanity. That would be the only way humanity would actually truly be able to receive an unconditional love of God. That God wasn't a capricious God, but that God was willing to let go of everything. So this is the model of our faith, complete and utter stripping of privilege. And yet, in this matter of marriage equality, it is this absolute refusal to acknowledge heteronormative privilege in any way, or certainly, Tyhe, as you mentioned, misogyny, patriarchy. That's certainly a cultural aspect of the times in which our sacred text was written. If it wasn't so tragic, it would be, this sort of crazy irony of the very things that our story of faith teach us about the way to make things right is what so many Christians are refusing to do in this very conflict.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Because there are. I mean, I am of course, even though I don't have. I was raised in a very strange community, by the way. Half my family were Protestant and half were Mormon. So don't even ask me how that happened. But I escaped when I was 8 years old because I was asked not to become. I asked too many questions, but I am one of those people that read the Bible carefully and got into, and read a lot of things about pagan history as well. So, but for me, there are without question there are a lot of the things in the teachings of whether you want to call it the Christ consciousness is how I address it.
Sure.
That he had a lot of things. He had a lot of wonderful things to say, without question. I've never argued. When people talk about him, don't argue. It's when people try and manipulate to what he had to say or try and control is when I then become angry about it. And but not just him. I think every so-called religious leader has tried to manipulate it in one way or another, and seem to want to bring it. But I have noticed that it's always. I know we're talking about the LGBT side of it tonight, but or today from your point of view, I don't know. It's tonight for me. Sorry, in the UK. But from the LGBT side, but it always seems that what goes hand in hand with that is the misogynistic side of it, and so it always seems to be these straight men who are the ones that are vying for the power, who are the ones with the hang-ups. And I would think it would be really interesting to kind of sit them around the table and say, okay, guys, so what the hell is it that's your problem, really? And what is it that absolutely terrifies you so much? And, let's deal with it, shall we? Let's get you some therapy. Because it is your problem,
Tyhe, I'm delighted with your idealistic vision, because I'm a bit of an idealist as well. The reality is, of course, that it's much easier to steward power than it is to actually enter your own vulnerability, to actually look at, what does make you human. I have been absolutely taken with this quote of Desmond Tutu: "If I diminish you, I diminish myself."
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This is the reality of our shared humanity. And when we dehumanize anyone, we're wounding all of us. And when there's a refusal to see that, then it's very difficult to move forward in dialogue. We are always going to be a motley crew of human beings with different ways of forming and shaping our beliefs and values. And so there needs to be room for diversity, freedom of conscience, that sort of thing. It's certainly not that I have some utopian vision of everyone thinking the same way, but there needs to be an utter core of value and respect. And when we lose sight of that, when we can dehumanize someone, whether it's in the name of religion or any other reason, then we all lose. And, if I could say that to, Xander, I saw a post on Facebook today. It's a church in Georgia. It's called the Ten Commandments Church, and they put a big sign out that says homosexuality is a death-worthy crime, and then they cite Leviticus 18:22. And
wow,
it's like, as a Canadian, again, it's a little hard for me to even imagine that. I mean, they would be taken in front of the Human Rights Tribunal, toot sweet, so to speak, immediately.
Right. Yeah.
And how that just can sort of be out there publicly inciting hatred with an overtone of death.
Wow.
But I have no words for that sort of. Pardon?
That's kind of almost incitement.
I think it's certainly.
It's an invitation, isn't it? It's basically.
Yeah, that's not just free speech. That's saying, Georgia is a
that's
state
hate speech
with a history of lynching. I mean, this is not inconsequential to put these sorts of things out.
Yeah. It's interesting as well.
Here's the thing for me. I've always tried to look at this objectively, but I think both parts of the community have to change and have to look at compromising, because both parts of the community, and I'm not meaning for my speech to be kind of like segregational, but there's an element of brainwashing. And for years I kind of had the ideology that all Christians, Republicans, et cetera, hated gay people. And someone said to me this week, who happened to be a conservative Christian, that they thought that all gay people hated Christians. And obviously that's not true. But there's an element of circular brainwashing with all of this. And my message kind of this week really has been about remaining compassionate whilst maintaining the courage of our convictions. And that's the hard thing, because we're not blameless as the LGBTQ community, and neither is the Christian element of the community. We all have to grow and change, but there seems to be this ideology that both parts want to blame each other. Well, we all have kind of things that we could have done better and differently, but we all have to work together to change it.
Well, I think, Xander, that's why I feel very fortunate and blessed to be able to be in community with LGBTQ people of faith, because they bridge that gap. So it isn't two polarized communities talking past one another, but there are these incredible human beings who embody a sense of identification with both communities in one person. And, you know, it's it's an incarnational role in today's context to say, hold it. I am a living stereotype breaker. You know, I'm not all of the assumptions that you have about each other. Here I am. Will you listen to my journey? And it often is a journey that has pain. It has not been easy for most of the LGBT Christians that I know to integrate their faith and their sexuality in a way that was life-giving and humanizing to them. Now, thankfully, that is changing slowly. And so we have younger LGBT people in Christian contexts who are marrying their partners in church ceremonies and feeling like they have a future and that God blesses and loves them, and you know, they are standing on the shoulders of older LGBT people who suffered and who had to deconstruct the shame that religion was throwing at them. And yet, you know, we still see suicides. We still see, you know, there was just a horrific blog commenting on the Bruce Jenner interview, saying, you know, that Bruce was a sad and delusional man, and just so erroneous and inappropriate, and you know, and then other Christians try to say, hold it, this is not speaking for all of us, and this is how Jesus would respond, and you know, but the best antidote is to hear the trans Christian voice saying, I live in these realities, and hear my story, and let it both convict all of you, challenge all of you, but also humble all of you and spur you on to a deeper sense of connection, because we all lose when we lose that connection.
Yeah, I think the perfect example is the Westbury Baptist Church, isn't it? That's the most horrific of it. And then, of course, there are people like yourselves in an organisation like yourselves that are the best of it. And that's, as Andy was saying, we need to remember that, you know, that's the... Because I had to, and he's talking about changing, I had to change because I used to get so angry when people talked to me about religion. I would just start ranting about it and hated it. Now I've changed. Obviously, now I realise I'm talking to people who have faith, and I ignore that word religion because it was the word religion that made me angry, and realised it wasn't actually people who had faith that made me angry. It was that. So I have to change that.
Anger is always a secondary emotion. And so, you know, I implore, whether it's LGBT people encountering angry Christians or Christians encountering angry queer people, anger is always a secondary emotion. And it arises because there has been pain. You know, people aren't just pissed off for the hell of it. they're especially when there's that sort of rage, the more intense the anger is, the deeper the pain goes. And if we hope to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers, not, sort of superficial tolerance, but making peace, recovering that sense of connection together, then we have to patiently hear through the anger and begin to touch the pain and acknowledge and apologize and confess and repent and do whatever we can to make some degree of amends. And all of those words are limited. I mean, no one can go back in the past and undo what has been done.
No.
And when people have been profoundly traumatized and hurt, those who have some opportunity to identify with the oppressor, even if they personally didn't inflict the pain, it is incumbent upon them to be patient, to be gentle, to be kind, and recognize that pain runs so deep. There's never a quick fix. There's never a formula. I get to apologize to ex-gay survivors, and that is both a rare, sacred privilege and profoundly painful, because I can never undo what has been done to people that shamed the very core of their being, that robbed them of years of their life, that robbed them of their finances. But I can say, yes, this happened to you, and yes, it was wrong, and yes, it has nothing to do with faith and spirituality that's consistent with life-giving hope and goodness and joy and love. And, our organization didn't change its name, even though that in some ways would have been a lot easier. The reason we didn't change the name is to say we want to be a living demonstration of repentance, of changing our mind, of listening to ex-gay survivor stories and saying, this is not consistent with the gospel. We need to do things a new way. We need to, be a living apology, to even as limited as it is. And that doesn't make people's pain go away, but I think it is at least one step towards saying, this matters, and we are not sweeping it under the rug. And
sure.
And we exist to serve you, to serve others who've been hurt, and that is how we move towards peace together.
Absolutely. I mean, I was heartened. I read last year about when I lived in the UK, the church that I was with sent me to some ex-gay ministries, and the ideology, when I think back, was kind of a little barbaric. But I was kind of heartened to hear that this ex-gay ministry has now turned itself around and are doing similar things to what you're doing. And for want of a better phrase, they kind of saw the error of their ways, and they turned around. And to me, that was just amazing, because it's not people like Tyhe and myself who all of this affects, although it does indirectly. It's the younger people that are out there that are being fed these lines and are being told God doesn't love them because they're gay, et cetera, because there's this level of trickle down that's where it ends up. It's the young people that are affected mostly by this. I know it's people of all ages, but I personally think it's mostly young people that are affected by this. And every time I hear of some young person who's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, has killed themselves, I just kind of feel that we've just got so much more to do. We've come a long way, but we've got so much more to do.
And this is the terrible paradox that we're in. If I look at the rate of systemic change, it has actually been very fast, which is, I think, why we see such strong backlash, because people know that, on many things we're either very close to the tipping point, we've hit the tipping point, or the tipping point is past. The horse has left the barn. People in the U.S. know that it's only a matter of time until marriage equality is across all 50 states. And so that means in the midst of this systemic change, we understand that technology has broken the isolation. People are sharing their stories with one another. They're sharing resources with one another. The ex-gay survivor narrative has done in the last 10 years what, say, a William Wilberforce had to work at for 40 years. Right. And that is, we're seeing more and more legislative efforts to ban reparative therapy, to say all the psychological professional associations say this does not work and it is likely to cause profound harm. And so, particularly for minors, parents cannot force their kids into reparative therapy. And so you say, wow, that's fast change. But when even one child kills themselves, it's not fast enough. Exactly. And so how do you live in this urgency? I might call it a prophetic urgency to work for justice and also recognize that systemic change takes time. Because you don't want to do violence to anyone in the process of change. And for those for whom this feels like you're kicking the very foundation of their religious constructs, their system of faith, you're kicking it apart, how do we care for those individuals, not do violence against them, and yet convey clearly that, there are children dying, and this is not just sort of the gay agenda, gay propaganda. This is the real deal. Like, there are suicides happening weekly, and we need to act, and we need to act yesterday.
I totally agree. And I was on a radio show last night where we were talking about these things, and they kind of wanted to steer more towards the kind of the governmental involvement in this, kind of by pushing the agenda further rather than kind of doing it at a rate that people are comfortable with. But can we afford to, with some things, can we afford to wait for a time when people are comfortable, when kids are actually dying because of this lack of understanding and lack of care?
No, I don't think. I think for us now, the imperative is to reach the kids. We need to stop worrying right now about the adults that can't deal with us being gay or their kids being gay, because reaching out to them is not good enough. It's not working. It's not happening. They're still throwing the children out onto the streets, and they're still allowing the children to die. And a lot of those adults are still terrifyingly think it's acceptable. I still hear parents say, I would rather my child dead than gay. So for me, for Voyager, that's the whole point of it. The imperative is still reach those children, reach those young adults, not and worry about the so-called Christians who haven't learned yet, or those angry people who haven't learned yet, because you're right, those young people are still dying. So it's important to reach them first, and let's worry about the ignorant later.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you, Tyhe, and in my book I differentiate between an activist and an advocate. And to me, I think it has to be both and I absolutely resonate with that sense of urgency. And at the same time, if I really believe that we are interconnected, that if I diminish anyone, I diminish myself, then it has to be both and. And there are those who are wired to be activists, and they're working faithfully and passionately at the variety of levels at which there needs to be an activist voice, that resilient, persistent determination. And there are those who function as advocates, who are coming alongside homeless youth, but who are also coming alongside their families. And there's more than enough human beings on the earth to do both. And it's so our organization, people have said to us, how can you possibly serve LGBT people and serve the church? You're serving the oppressed and you're serving the oppressor. But
that is so ironic. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, to me it's both and, because if we don't care for everyone who's impacted by these realities, do we end up taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? I want to see sustainable, systemic change, and that means the hearts of parents and grandparents and church leaders need to change. While at the same time we need affordable housing and safe shelter space and programs for queer youth who are street involved. We need to be working at all of those fronts. And for me, it's a question of empowering and resourcing people in their different callings. And that, again, sorry, that's very religious kind of language. But so instead of saying it's either or, I want to say it's both and, because I want real change to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I would, sorry, Wendy, to interrupt, but I was going to say, not that I would stop any of that happening, and I agree with what you're saying. It was just as Xander added there, but for me, the imperative as a gay man, for my imperative would be, I don't have time to worry about the ignorant. My imperative is to get to those kids.
Right, absolutely.
That was but I certainly don't disagree with your work or what you're doing. Of course, it needs to be done, on every level. But for my imperative would be those young kids.
Absolutely.
As a gay man, do you know what I mean?
And I'm grateful, Tyhe, because someone has to speak up for them.
Exactly. And it's kind of almost, it's kind of like, for want of a better phrase, it's like having to have a foot in both camps, because quite often the gay community will rebuke us, both Tyhe and myself, because we don't agree with everything they say. And we'll get the same from the religious community, because they don't agree with everything that we say either. Because our aim is not to further our agenda. Our aim is to affect change, but not just with the LGBTQ, ABCD folks. It's everybody else too. Because if we don't expect for the LGBT folks to grow and evolve, how can we expect that from the people that we're trying to impress a different ideology onto? It has to be all of us. I quoted you at the beginning of the show, Wendy, with something that you said on Facebook in response to things that had gone on this week. You said, there's no us and them, there is just us. And I think as soon as we grasp that, we will start to work together more. There's no us and them, there's just us.
Mm-hmm. Well,
absolutely.
As someone who regularly gets criticized by those on the far right and on the far left, people see me as either not progressive enough or too progressive. And many of my friends who try to encourage me when sometimes it gets difficult say, well, if you're not pissing off people on both sides, you're probably not having much of an effect.
I love you, Wendy. And I love that you can say the word queer without apology, too, Not a lot of people can do that. We've come to the end of our time together. I could carry on talking forever, but I want you to tell people, Wendy, where they can find your book and what it's called, and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah. The website of the organization is newdirection.ca. There's no S on the end. It's just newdirection.ca. And the book is Generous Spaciousness, Responding to Gay Christians in the Church. And it was written primarily for more evangelical, conservative, straight folks to help them begin to participate in this absolutely essential journey of transformation towards justice. Just us. It's about justice, where we can dismantle the barriers that are preventing others from flourishing.
Wonderful. We will endeavor to share the link to that book. If you go to www.xandergibb.com/radio, all of Wendy's details are on the page for today. I always feel when you come on, I know this is only the second time, but there's so much more to discuss, so I hope you'll carry on coming back to us to keep this conversation going, because I think it's an imperative one to actually further.
Love to, Xander, and it's been a delight to chat with you, Tyhe.
And you too, Wendy. It's been a really nice, it's been a really interesting but really good conversation for me to have too as well. Really nice to speak to you.
Good. Grace
Absolutely.
and peace to you both.
And to you too, Wendy, and thanks for joining us. As I said, Wendy is the director of New Direction CA. We'll be sharing her details after the show. But for now, Wendy, thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thanks, Xander.
Take care.
Thank you. Wow, what a wonderful discussion that was. If you want to keep this conversation going, you can tweet us on Twitter. All of our Twitter handles are on the show page for today. And with the blasts I've been sending out, you can tweet Wendy, you can tweet myself, you can tweet Tyhe. We'll be willing to carry on this conversation and possibly answer any questions that you have. Civil Discourse is the name of the game. Well, we've gone way over time, but I had a fabulous time today.
I know.
I don't know about you. It's always the way when you get into these conversations that you...
Yeah, but worth it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So what are we playing out with today, Tyhe?
Well, you always put this on me. I should be ready, shouldn't I? I think we should go out with a bit of media horse. Are you ready for that, or is that not?
Yeah, I think I've got
Let's
that.
wait, people. We've been clean and serene.
Yes, exactly.
Let's go out with a bang.
We will indeed. But before we go, I'd like to thank everyone who's made, today's show possible. Thanks to Tyhe for co-hosting. Thanks to Wendy Gritter, the regional director from New Direction Canada. Make sure you check her out on social media and tell her that Xander and Tyhe sent you. So say goodnight, Tyhe, while I get this track ready to play. It's called Promophonic, and it's by the Media Hordes, and I'm hoping there's nothing too controversial in it.
No, I don't think there's any. No, I don't know. Well, the band's called the Media Hordes, ladies and gentlemen. I think we really know where this is going. It's from their second album. If I've got that wrong, I'm in trouble. It features my co-writer, the lovely J.B. McKellar.
Slap him, Jim.
Not called Slap him, Jim. So, yes, one of my favourite rock bands. I think we said this last week, didn't I? But I don't think there'll be anything there that will shock you all, ladies and gentlemen. We do run an adult radio show here, really, don't we? We don't sing nursery rhymes.
Absolutely.
So I think you'll all cope. So there we go. Without further ado, I think, have you found the play button, sweetie?
I have indeed. It's good night from me. We'll see you next time, and I love you all. And
good night, darlings, boys, girls, children, and everybody who's not sure. See you next week.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.